Welcome first-time listeners and returners to the Sports Deli, where everyone deserves a seat at the table. What about fucking Colin? Why does he not have a fucking job? Because he's still being whiteballed. Why is Tom not speaking out about that? He should be his biggest fucking ally. And he hasn't said one fucking thing. A lot of people that have come on this show, I don't know why, they've gotten some good fucking jobs afterwards. Jim Rome in the jungle. It's right here in the Sports Deli, baby. We got some good ass karma right here. Let's fucking go.
I love it.
Man.
I love it.
We hope you enjoy today's show, everyone.
All right, let's rock and roll. Today's podcast is brought to you by my Amazon shop. Check it out at amazon.com/shop/the Sports Deli. And you can see all the products that I've done videos on, my idea list, and my shoppable photos. I may make a commission on any of the things that you watch or see, but it's at no extra cost to you. Enjoy today's show. Do we have to refer to him as Mr. Duncan? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, please, I'm very formal, Secretary Duncan.
There you go. All right, let's hit it. Hey, everyone. This is Hoot, host and producer of the Sports Daily Podcast. Thanks for joining me for this special edition with regards to Phil Jackson, Part 2. I've had some time to digest the information that I've heard, listen to various people's perspectives, and I heard something tonight that got me so upset, not necessarily because of what we already know about Phil Jackson, that he's one of those guys, as Will Evans from YouTube, shout out to Will Evans, put together a great piece on this subject. And he said it best, that Phil Jackson wants to benefit off the backs of the black and brown community. But he's certainly not going to hang out with them. And he's definitely not going to want any one of his children to date someone of color. He's one of them. As Will said, there goes the neighborhood. And I guess what's pissed me off more than anything is that Phil Jackson, the Zen Master, has gotten a pass, in my opinion. Yeah, he faced some backlash. He even had some apologists. I really wonder what Kobe would say if he was still alive. It's one of the things that I thought about. So I've heard Scottie Pippen speak on the matter and believes that he is a racist. And before I continue down this path of a couple other people's responses to Phil, and I'm in the space of at least trying to be a bridge and a vessel, listen, learn, educate, pay it forward, mobilize as a white ally, as a white Jewish ally. So, it's like when you buy a new car and you never saw that car before on the road as much as you do now because you bought the car. So you pay attention differently and you just say to yourself, one day, wow, I didn't realize there were so many Toyota RAVs on the road. And so I'm sort of in that same vein. I notice nuance in this space differently than maybe someone who grew up differently than I did. And I was integrated in 5th grade, thank God. And I had a conversation today with my youth basketball coach, who is a gentleman of color. Grew up in the South, was raised in the Midwest. And we talked about a number of things, and I'm trying to get him on the podcast because his story is fascinating from what I've heard so far. And he was one of my father figures growing up because I lost all 6 of my dads growing up, 2 to suicide. And so he was one of those father figures along with Mr. Golding and Richard Maltz in particular. And he told me during one point that he was pulled over 3 or 4 times, which is not a surprise to anybody. We know that people of color are pulled over and racially profiled. So then, fast forward to this evening when I heard this piece from Will Evans. He's got about 75,000 subscribers on YouTube. Put together a great piece regarding the Phil Jackson situation. So then I thought about how I felt throughout this entire thing after having let it breathe for a while, that Phil Jackson has gotten a pass. The same way that the New Jersey Nets owner got a pass. The same way that Peyton and Eli Manning get passes for not being more publicly vocal with regards to social injustice. How Tom Brady gets a pass for not being more vocal about social injustice, about not using his white privilege and leveraging it in situations like this, in situations where there's inequalities in the NFL, to be a white ally, to be anti-racist, to be conscious and deliberate, to be a bridge, to be a vessel, to create a better narrative for the black and brown community. I can't tell you how rewarding it's been to be in this space, in this podcast, to create a situation where people can come on the show and share their stories in this safe space. And so you combine Mr. Emmanuel telling me some things about his upbringing, growing up in the township, had no idea, that you weren't allowed to cross over into certain neighborhoods, that he lived in one area and then he moved into another to help raise his kids in a better area, to give them a better life. And then you got a guy like Phil Jackson who's a fraud. Literally a fraud. I don't care how many championships he's won. If he came on this show, I would tell him he is a flat out fraud. And the audacity, knowing what people of color have been through. And if anyone's supposed to understand nuance, it's Phil Jackson. Having grown up in the civil rights era, having been around politicians, having been around two of the top 5 players that have ever played the game in Kobe and MJ. And instead, he uses his white privilege to call out LeBron James's people and his posse racist, to say that he doesn't want to watch the NBA anymore since Black Lives Matter racist. Then you have Scottie Pippen's comments about how he believes Phil Jackson is racist. You have J.R. Ryder, and if you haven't heard those comments, that was probably the nail in the coffin for me. And we all evolve differently. Like I said, I was integrated at a very young age, and I told my youth coach, Mr. Emmanuel, this today. Like, thank goodness for my experiences at Oak Park High School. Shout out to the 313. So J.R. Ryder at one point was around Phil Jackson, and Phil Jackson said, I guess, trying to evoke some sort of reaction as a joke, I hope something to this extent. I hope we don't find you down on Crenshaw doing something to the extent of that. And J.R. Ryder didn't find it funny. And the more that I've listened to people talk about their experiences and mental health and where they came from, what their inspirations were, what their why was. Like, just think about someone's why. The people that Phil Jackson was around a lot. I don't know all the stories, but just think about the whys of so many people who make it in professional sports. How they had to battle through so many different things, physically, culturally, in terms of their neighborhoods, white people, discrimination. And for someone who's supposed to understand that better than anyone, to make the types of comments that he's made and get a pass the same way that Brett Favre has gotten a pass, but when it comes to Kyrie Irving, getting lambasted for making a mistake, clarifying it, apologizing, but then treated like a second-class citizen, just like Phil Jackson is treating the black and brown community. And he's getting a pass, and I think it's absolute horseshit. And I really wish he would come on my show, because I would let him have it. Like, I just can't. I literally, like, after hearing J.R. Ryder's comments, like, I just cannot. Like, you're not supposed to go. Like, if I had a chance to go back to the 313 into Oak Park, which is like a suburb of Detroit, right? We had a lot of people of color at my high school, my middle school. You damn right I would get a haircut in the 313 in Oak Park in Detroit, not in West Bloomfield. So J.R. Ryder's not supposed to go back to Crenshaw and get a haircut or go say hi to people that he loves and knows. There's just been too many comments. There's been too many stories by too many people. And, like, fuck the dumb shit. Like, for real, for real. Like, man, I just, I don't know, man. I am encouraged by Gen Z, by the millennials, by the Cuspers. But the one thing that I know is that social media and phones are the best thing that's ever happened to the black and brown community. So even though we continue to have things happen in our society that have been happening for centuries, the only difference now is we can keep the conversation going because these people are being exposed. And I'm so glad. Shame on Phil Jackson. Shame on more white people for not coming out, especially in the NBA, and calling him out. Now, I'm not going to say anything about Greg Popovich or Steve Kerr. Maybe there's a code with NBA coaches that you don't say shit about other coaches, just like you don't talk about certain things that are in the locker room. But fuck that. Phil Jackson is a coward. Phil Jackson, based on the evidence that I've heard, is racist. He's tone deaf. He's wrong. And it's not too late. But it's powerful people like that, and powerful people like Jerry Jones, and powerful white people like Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers, and Peyton and Eli Manning, and Tony Romo, and Troy Aikman, and there's others, that by not speaking out, their silence is deafening. And I've said this time and time again. It is just absolutely ridiculous at this point in time, when we're seeing a level of divisiveness that we've never seen before, when it's only about putting food on your table and it's only about your brand.
And to basically shut the fuck up and dribble and keep politics out of sports. Like, are you shitting me? I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole from the Muhammad Ali's to the Arthur Ashes to the Serena Williamses to everybody in between. But you've got to be kidding me that we're revisiting the shut up and dribble. Isn't it a little late for that? Aren't we past that? Shouldn't we be leveraging sports in any way possible to speak out about social injustice and police brutality? Yes, we should. Yes, we absolutely should. And for Phil Jackson to not recognize that, to not understand that, to not 100% believe in the power of that and how there are strength in numbers, what kind of Zen Master are you?
I couldn't let it go because I feel like he's gotten a pass, like I said. Like Brett Favre's gotten a pass, and like so many white people get passes. It was a couple of day thing, and then that was the end of it. Shame on you, Phil Jackson. I don't give a shit how many rings you've won. You are a big, huge fraud, and that's sad. It's sad, and everyone should be calling him out. Like I said, maybe I don't understand the code, but I want to hear from the Jay Billises. I want to hear from the Seth Greenbergs. I want to hear from all the white people that have the ability to speak out and denounce these types of comments. Because those types of microaggressions, not that he's in some sort of like white supremacist group being completely like overt with everything. But this is a large segment of our society still, and it's fucked up. It is royally fucked up. So we can talk shit about Trump and we can talk shit about Biden and but sports and Hollywood are two things that we look to for inspiration, motivation, education, laughter, mobilizing. And this kind of thing sets us back as a society, to not have the empathy and the understanding and the clarity that you should have with your life experiences is beyond me. It's just beyond me. Shout out to J.R. Ryder. Shout out to Scottie Pippen. For him to criticize LeBron James, man, his team of brilliant, thoughtful, caring, responsible, courageous, and giving, incredible team, and the type of person that LeBron James is, for you to be that out of touch, and we know that so many people listen to people like this, to feed off of it, to weaponize it, Instead, we should be talking about what I just said, how groundbreaking, how forward-thinking, how unprecedented LeBron James's team is, who grew up without a dad, but yet is one of the most amazing fathers, never gets in trouble. He could do what Tom Brady does. He could do what Michael Jordan does. He could do what Tiger Woods does. And what most people in Hollywood and in sports do, who are the faces of those respective entities, which is to remain silent and to protect their brand. And instead, he builds schools. He fights voter suppression by encouraging people to vote, especially in the black and brown community, when they have every reason to believe that their vote doesn't matter. Who speaks out about social injustice when this is actually a white issue, and it should be white people that speak out about social injustice. It's not up to the black and brown community to explain to the world what it means. It's up to us to educate ourselves and listen when people in the black and brown community share their experiences, their lived experiences, their ancestors' experiences, the experiences that still go on today, the experiences of people like Mr. Emanuel, and for Phil Jackson to know the history of this country and to know what everyone's been through in that space and how hard it was to get to where we are today, even though there's so many things that continue to happen. It's disgusting. It's so literally disgusting and insulting. It's a lot of things. It's fucked up, is what it is. Black Lives Matter wasn't about the organization, it's about Black Lives Mattering at the minimum. So for you to push the narrative that you can't watch basketball anymore because on the back of players' jerseys were different words to raise awareness with regards to social injustice and police brutality, I just don't get it, man. And maybe I would be going down the same road that he is if I had been raised differently. I recently had Arne Duncan on my podcast. He was the Secretary of Education under President Barack Obama. Now, say what you want about President Obama. Every president fails in a lot of areas for various reasons. But he did a lot of great things, especially Obamacare. Now, this is a selfish plug, but if you haven't listened to the podcast with Arne Duncan right here in the Sports Deli, I encourage you to do so. Because there's some things that I knew, but there's some things I didn't know. What Arne went through as a kid because of what his mom made him do. His mom was threatened with her life because she didn't care about segregation as a white ally in the 60s and 70s, going into neighborhoods, helping the black and brown community, and bringing her young son, and I'm specifically just talking about Arne right now. He is as white can get, growing up in the streets of Chicago. And I'm not saying that people have to go through those types of experiences in order to have an understanding, in order to be an ally, in order to be a bridge and a vessel to help create a more equitable society. But when I hear stories like that, that a white woman in the 60s was taking her white son into the black and brown neighborhoods despite having threats on her life, and knowing that Phil Jackson was surrounded by the same experiences, but he came to the conclusion that he came to, and Arne Duncan, after being the Secretary of Education, is still fighting for the kids in the black and brown community in the city of Chicago. Why? I don't know. Clearly it had something to do with his mother, his father, and his upbringing. What's more important than wanting other people to win? What's more important than being a voice for people in marginalized communities? What do you want your legacy to be? That you were a great businessman like Grant Cardone? Do you think Steph Curry wants to be remembered more for being a phenomenal transformational basketball player or for being a part of educating society in a way that helps bring people, especially in the white space, into the middle and be a part of solutions when it comes to systemic racism, police brutality, and social injustice? If you pay attention to Steph Curry when he does interviews with President Obama, or he has his book club, or he's donating to historical black colleges, or some of the other programs that him and his wife have done, those types of things to people like Steph Curry and LeBron James are way more important, even though basketball is very important. And they're both going to go down as two of the top 10 players that have ever played the game. So anyways, I think I shared what I wanted to share. But again, when I was watching Will Evans's piece, it just got me hot under the collar again about how Phil Jackson got a pass. Shout out again to Will Evans. Great piece. Check him out. He's got about 75,000 subscribers. And he put together a really nice piece on this whole thing and then brought it home beautifully in the end. Sad, man. Sad. But it's an opportunity to keep the conversation going, to expose the frauds, to expose the covert and the overt racists. And I've gotten a lot of comments about people that have listened to my material, whether it's podcasts or my posts on all social medias. A lot of pushback, but people that have brought receipts, who have appreciated the content, that have said, I don't agree with all your opinions and your points of view, but I appreciate the way that you come across and how you try and educate people. And I didn't realize a lot of this stuff was going on. But you know who knew this stuff was going on and knows that it's still going on? Phil Jackson, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, Troy Aikman, Tony Romo. And why aren't they speaking out the way that Steve Kerr and Greg Popovich do? Sad. Truly, truly sad. I'm going to remember Phil Jackson for this, not the Zen Master, not the coach who coached Kobe, Shaq, Scotty, and MJ, who won all those championships. I'm just not, because something changed after George Floyd, and I have zero tolerance for this bullshit. Now, if he does a 180 and shows that he's completely genuine about how out of touch he was, we love to forgive people. And if he stays the course, then it's another chapter, and we'll see. But until then, he's going to continue to get a pass like all these other guys. Until next time, this is Hootie Hoot with a special edition on the very disappointing, at the least, Phil Jackson. Now go do the right thing, everyone. Much love. Here we go. Thanks again for joining us today, everyone. Feel free to send me an email to thesportsdeli@gmail.com. Also, check out my link tree. It's /Mike Hootner. Also, like to thank a few people. 40 Tons brand is a socially conscious cannabis brand, and they're doing amazing things. Check them out. We'd also like to thank Moolah Kicks, the first ever female brand basketball shoe in the history of the world. We'd also like to encourage you, if you're having a hard day and if you're feeling like you just don't want to live anymore, all you have to do is dial 988 from any phone, and there will be someone there 24/7, 365. So don't feel like you have to fight this battle alone. Don't forget to do your self-breast and self-testicular exams every month. It's really important, as early detection is the key. Remember, Black Lives Matter. Reach out to your local and state politicians for any individual or group that you feel are being marginalized. Stop the bullying. Stop the Asian hate. Let's end gun violence with common sense laws. Let's be allies for the LGBTQIA+ community. And I challenge those of you in the white space to be anti-racist, to be bridges and vessels, to help bridge the gaps between black and white America. And remember, until next time, it takes a village, everyone. Much love.